As I come to a crossroads trying to figure out if Kingsway is my forever home, I wish it was. Um, I feel like there have been time and time again when I have said I don't like the way things or that thing is, but oh well, and moved on from it. And I feel like I've done that a lot over the years. Um, one time here and one time there didn't bother me, but as I look back, I feel like it's more of a recurring theme. Not that, Kingsway needs to bow down to me by any means, but there's just things I just wish we didn't do. Um, I've talked to friends, I've had friends at other churches, friends at other staff at other churches, friends that were staff at other churches, and they all just say, yeah, that's just a big church thing. They all do it. Why? Kingsway's stuck in the middle. We're not a small church. We're not a mega church, local mega church. I don't know if they call those multi-site churches mega churches or not here locally, but we're not that. I think it's fairly evident that that's not where we're headed, at least not anytime soon. I'd like to think never. But, I say why? Why are we stuck doing big church things? And what I mean by that, there's a lot of them that have crossed through my mind at one time or another. I'm terrible about writing these down and remembering them, but the biggest one to me is, who are you at Kingsway? I guess it's relevant that we visited. If I do move churches, it's not going to be into a multi-site, but I wanted to see them. I feel like most of our staff have visited them on time or another. Why can't I? So, visited Traders Plainfield and Traders main campus, and Traders Plainfield. I wanted to see what that whole sermon on a screen thing was about. Didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, but they've got a good thing going for them. It's okay. Had a nice congregation there. They all seemed to felt like a good vibe, kind of like Kingsway does. And then visited main campus, and again, bigger. Definitely not my flavor, but fortunately, the week we went, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, the main preacher was back, and he was talking about their vision quite a bit. A good sermon along with it, but talked about how they have 7 campuses, and they had 4 or 5 more that they're hunting on and trying to open in the coming years. And I thought, Traders as a whole organization, they feel like they're doing what they need to do, and I'm not saying they're wrong. They're bringing people to Christ. Like I said, as an organization, they're doing what they feel like the organization should be doing. Who are you, person in seat 347 at Traders? You're nobody. Maybe in your small group you're somebody. There's people that know you. That's fine. But as a Traders organization, you're nobody. It kind of feels the same at Kingsway. I started attending Kingsway a little over 20 years ago. Obviously, John was a preacher, and we had I don't know the guy's name, who was the worship leader, a tall, bald guy. But I know a lot of people still remember him, but I don't. But I just remember stories of congregation members that had extraordinary struggles going on. I remember some child that was born that we got weekly updates from the stage all the time about what was going on. And it wasn't not just that one story, but it was regular, that not just someone's dog is sick or someone's dog died, but substantial instances in people's lives were brought up from the stage, were prayed about from the stage, were shared with the congregation. As we grew, obviously that went to the wayside. So much of the personal touch of church went to the wayside for the sake of being a big church. And I understand to a point. You can't pray for everyone's dog. You can't pray for everyone's cold from the stage. You can't. I mean, we have avenues to get prayer. I understand that. But what I don't understand is when Brenda Howard, she was like our little church mascot. She was annoying. She was loud, but she loved everybody. And she loved Kingsway. And when she died, not a word from stage. Not about she's passed, not about her, celebration of life, whatever she had, nothing. If you weren't in a loop, you didn't know she was even gone. Stan the Hat Man out in the parking lot. My understanding is, he was going to retire from that position. He just wanted to move on. I don't know if he was moving churches or just wanted to slow down a little bit, but he was retiring from that position. And I was told a short time later he coincidentally had a stroke and survived it. But I was, again, this was more of a rumor, but I heard he was, it was a big setback for him. It was somewhat debilitating. Not a word. That man had been around, touched lives and people's hearts for decades at Kingsway. And not a word. However, and I don't mean this as a jab, man, but back when Matt's mom was going through her big cancer battle, we rattled the gates of heaven for that woman. Weekly. What do we have, t-shirts? I think, maybe? The congregation, begged for that woman's life. That's not the precedent that I know Matt wants to set. I know it wasn't intentional. But when you step back and realize that privilege does exist, and I know it's not your intention, but you got to realize it does. It does. And there are other staff that would probably get the same or similar response. But the congregation, we don't. Rob Conrick, you probably know about his battle. I know because of Facebook, because somebody shared a GoFundMe. I never knew what was going on. I never knew he was unemployed or struggling. And again, every time somebody loses a job, we can't hold a whole prayer vigil. I get it. I'm sure there are people at church praying for him, and that's great. But man, the guy about died from his car wreck and needs help. And if you're not in certain loops, you just don't know. This is time and time again. Tim Lynch served the church, served our safety team, would have done anything he needed to for our congregation. No one mentioned his brain cancer. No one mentioned his battle. No one mentioned his dying. No one mentioned his death. No one mentioned his celebration of life. Man, is that the church we want to be? This big church that doesn't know who's in it? I mean, we went through this, this period where we kind of had this big divide. We lost a lot of people, and that sucked. It did. But one of the people who left told me they're so worried about getting people in the front door, they're not watching how many people are leaving out the back door. And that was very true at the time. They didn't care about the what's the word, digressions of the congregation. You had to get them first time guests. And that's that's been a theme for a while. I get you want to feel welcomed. I get it. But man, the focus on the first time guest over the congregation is probably most of the congregation's biggest beef. I mean, we don't poll the congregation to find that out. Maybe we should. Maybe there's ways to poll the congregation. I don't know. But it sucks whenever you're serving the church, loving the church, and their whole, they're just smiling and loving on the new members. And I get it. You got to. I'm not saying to disregard them, but I'm not saying, every sermon doesn't need to cater to them. Sometimes that you wish you heard from the stage that, We hear like all the time, some of y'all are new to this Jesus thing. That's okay. That's okay. You don't know where you stand on it, and that's okay. And that's truth, man. Some of y'all do. Some of y'all do, but still have questions. Some of y'all do, but still have struggles. Talk to them sometimes. Talk to them. You know, we're such a big church that we got these groups for different struggles of life. You know what I'm talking about. I know those are hard to talk about from stage. They are. It's hard to say what some of them are, why some, when some of them are. But there ain't no trouble. There's no problem telling people they exist. I just found out we have an AA on Wednesday nights. That's fantastic, man. How many people in our church could be struggling and needing to know that, but don't know that? Walking into some building somewhere that has AA or people you don't know, it's gotta be tough, man. But walking into church, we can do that. I don't know what all groups we have. I don't know how many different struggles we could be helping with. But we don't talk about that because we're a big church. We don't need to seem like we have a church full of people who have weekend problems. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying that's the intention. I get that. But that's what it feels like. It definitely does. There's just so many things, like, and this is one of my personal beefs, I'll admit that, but the photography. I've heard I'm not the only one. But, man, some of those photographers are there to ruin moments with God. I'm going to say it. Because when we're at the men's retreat and there are men being as vulnerable as they can, being broken, holding their hands up and praising God for it, and that kid jumps in to get that perfect picture. It's not what that man's doing. That man's not posing for a photograph. Nor the people in our sanctuary on Sunday morning. That's some of the most vulnerable moments. They swoop in right off the corner of them and snap that beautiful picture. That's not what they're there for. That person's talking to God, and you need to leave them alone. Praising God, begging God, whatever it is. And you need to leave them alone. Because you jump in front of them at these moments. And the people around them see that. They see that. You know how hard it is? If you're not that kind of person to put your arms up, to praise God in the midst of everyone, vulnerably, or to beg God vulnerably in the midst of a Sunday morning service. Because you know the second you close your eyes and put your arms up, this kid's going to jump in there and snap your freaking picture. We got to quit doing big church things. We got to start doing real church things. That's what we need. That's my opinion on what we need. As a safety team member, we've got our own griefs. We've got our own, but we've been told basically changes are coming that we don't like and we can shut up. They didn't tell us to shut up. I get that. But we were told that speaking up would, in so many words, we were told speaking up would do no good. Write a letter, whatever you want to do. But this is the change that's coming. We all said we don't feel safe with that decision. We don't feel like it's a good decision. We feel like it is working against this safety plan that we have, that we developed. We did. No one wrote a book for us. We have developed most of our own policies. And we've been told that, that front desk is going away. And we were like, that sounds bad. We ask all of our officers, our LEOs, what do you think? They said no. I said, okay, we thought maybe it was crazy, but we kind of thought it was a bad idea too. And I don't know if it's a big church thing. I don't know if we're just doing a big church thing and moving that front desk and doing things different because we're a big church. But I feel like it. I definitely do. I feel like most of the moves we make is because we got to do big church things. Oh, that church is doing it, or that church is doing it, and it's worked for them. We got to do that because we need it to work for us. No, we don't. We need to listen to our congregation. We need to know who our congregation is. We need to show that we care about our congregation. New guests, new people, we need them too. But we're so worried about the new ones, we don't care about the existing ones. You know, baptism is a thing that, baptism and marriage are things that I feel like the church needs to have more, not control by any means, input. Let's say input. Follow-up is what I really mean. You know, I assumed this, got to see it firsthand when a friend, co-worker, employee of mine started attending, had attended a handful of services, decided he was ready for baptism. I said, oh, that's great. And I thought he meant he was going to start taking some courses on baptism. And Andy Lynch, you know, this was a few months back, so over the summer sometime, Andy Lynch walks up with him and says he's ready to get baptized. I was like, oh, like ready? Okay. He says, today. I said, no way. You know, you can't stand in the front foyer and be like, no, you're not. But I knew Andy Lynch came with him. So, I mean, he had a conversation and a prayer with Andy Lynch. Andy Lynch said, I buy it. He is ready. I said, okay. You know, I hoped somebody had done a little bit of vetting because I had my concerns. But I'm not the guy to vet him. You know, I'm not. So I baptized him. And have about fired him probably a dozen times for coming to work drunk since then. He's not ready for God. He's not ready to live his life for God. He's not ready to quit drinking. He's 20 years old. 20 years old, man. That's tough. So I'm doing what I can to help. He's the reason I found out there's an AA class. So we had another Coming to Jesus talk this week, and he's got to start doing better and caring more. But you know what I'm getting at is if we baptize someone, I don't want us to be the church that throws them in the water, picks them up, and says, good luck to you. Aren't we following up? Is somebody? I doubt it. I don't know. And I haven't specifically asked him that question, but I kind of doubt it. It's kind of like when I got married some 15 years ago. John Knoll married me and Crystal, and she knew him from going to camp, church camp with him for many, many years, and family friend and all that good stuff. So I didn't really have anybody in my life that I would consider that close. I was absolutely happy to have him marry us. And knowing his position, he's church staff, and he's a good Christian man. I just assumed that the people he married, he kind of mentored in a way, followed up with, checked in on at least a little bit. That man never even looked at me in the halls. I don't know if he even knew who I was anymore. We didn't see each other for a long time, but in the halls, I'd just kind of watch him pass. And I wish we were a church that followed up. If we married somebody, if somebody in our church married somebody, and I mean, Matt's married a lot of people, I get that, and you can't just sit here and, you know, that's going to be your whole week, right? Checking in on everybody you've married. But like, to a point, maybe the first year, maybe there's somebody in the church, you know, just, these are the things, baptism and marriage are the things that, the two big I do's in life. You know, when I was baptized many, many years ago as a teenager in the Church of Christ, the man that baptized me, you know, his confession of faith was a little bit different, and he had me say, I do, at the end of it. And I was baptized, and I said, wow, that's one of the first two big I do's in my life. And those first two I do's, or those two I do's in life, I feel like if we have a part in them, we should help mold them, help mentor them. Check in on them, man. Just check in on them. Be that church. Be that church that loves on and builds our own people, our congregation. If you're in our congregation and you're getting baptized, that first year, how are you doing? Is it hard? Have you struggled? Do you need to talk? Same with marriage, exact same thing. How are you two doing? Marriage could be hard, you know? The wedding day was easy. After that, it could be hard. How are you doing? I think we need those people, man. We need to feed our congregation in a way that's big churches can't. They can't. And if these changes were implemented and radically grew us, we can't let go of it. You know, we need change. I mean, I'm one of these people. I've been around Kingsway for a while, like I said, and people. I've had plenty of people ask me, "What's up with this mass exodus of our staff?" And honestly, I give my honest opinion. I don't think much of it was malicious. I don't think we have a bad vibe at Kingsway. I don't feel like people are running away from Kingsway. They just got opportunities and they took them. And I said, you know, when it comes to, you know, Nate obviously got a leadership role. Great. You know, then really wasn't a whole lot, I don't think, besides, Megan and the other lady that left same time as Megan, I can't think of her name, that went back to teaching. You know, I knew Megan well enough to know where she was headed, you know, a different direction in life. And but then, you know, Darren, and you know, my wife was really upset about Darren leaving. I said, listen, that man's pushing 50 years old in student ministry. You can't exactly retire in student ministry. I get it. You know, he needed to move on. I felt like Kingsway dropped the ball. I feel like they should have created whatever they needed to, because Darren is a fantastic preacher and should be leading his own church and not a multi-site. But that's my opinion. Brett left. Andy Lynch left. I mean, we it's obvious, right? So we've had this mass exodus, and I got my opinions on every one of them, and most of them don't matter at all. But I don't believe there's any, like I said, malicious things going on, and people are running away. People are taking other opportunities to grow their own careers, essentially. But we know we're in this rebuilding period with staff. We know we are. And the vibe that we will set going forth in this next year of rebuilding staff and hiring on, man, it could be radical. It could be wildly different. It would be amazing to see things that stun our congregation in a good way. I don't know. There's probably so many more ideas I could throw out, but like, you know, I'm not going to be an elder. I'm not that guy. Okay, I'm not. I'll leave it at that. And I know you sit here and anybody should sit here and say, "Oh, you got a lot of ideas," and not want to be an elder, have your cake and eat it too, kind of thing. But I'm just a congregation member and a volunteer who wants to see Kingsway thrive in the way it once did. And I think it could. I think we're 3 changes away from closing our doors and 3 changes away from thriving. Give or take, whatever. I'm not saying I have those 3 listed. I'm just saying I think we are inches away from thriving and failure. We're at a middle point where we need to make some good choices, good turns. I want to see Kingsway do it. I don't want to leave, but I don't want to stay at a church that I just don't feel like cares about me. And I know it's, you know, I have to preface that because I'm not here. You know, Kingsway doesn't need to be about Josh. It doesn't. It doesn't need to be about any one person. You know, I want to make clear that I don't believe church should coddle, should avoid the gospel in order to make people happy. It's not like that. I hope I've made my point clear that I want church to care passionately about its members. You know, we've. I think a really good point is that it's very, very evident that Kingsway is not its staff, right? Like right now, if that's a stick in the gut, I'm sorry. But I, I had lunch with a friend who used to attend Kingsway a number of weeks ago, and we were reminiscing and talking about Kingsway and talking about his church and stuff, and I said Kingsway's in a dangerous spot. I said I feel like leadership should be 3 people. 3 people is a good minimum number. I felt like so I didn't like that Ben was gone. If Ben had to go, that's fine. If Ben wasn't the right person for the position, that's fine. But I felt like you should have 3 leaders at the top running a church of Kingsway size, and to go down to 2 is dangerous, and especially dangerous because I don't think one of those 3 people should be the preacher. I feel like the preacher might be the 4th. That'd be great. I don't feel the preacher should be an elder. I don't think he should be one of the top 3 as a staff member. I know the top 3 are all staff members. I get that. But like I said, at Kingsway size, 3 is not 2 people who got together, powwowed, and came up with some ideas or made massive decisions amongst 2 of them. 3 is a good number for the kind of decisions that need to be made for Kingsway. 3 is a good number. Leaving that to 2 was dangerous. I said, if one of those 2 ever leaves, we don't have a leadership team anymore. We have a person who's going to probably bail before they could run Kingsway on their own. And 2 days later, Brett announced he was resigning. We're in a dangerous spot. I know I've heard that the elders are jumping in. That's fantastic. I thank God for them. I think we've got some great elders. I know we've got some great elders. And they're doing their best to help fill the gap. Thank God they are, because I just can't imagine. I mean, Matt, any head preacher's got the weight of the world on their shoulders. I get that. But, for it to all fall down to Matt. And I thought the same thing, if Matt were to move on and it's just Brett, what do we do? 2 is a bad number. Should be 3 plus the preacher. I hope they see that now that we've fallen into this hole. And I hope we rebuild in a more responsible way. Like I said, I want nothing more to see Kingsway back in the days when we didn't have enough parking. Miss them days. We need to make some choices. We need to make some decisions to support our congregation in a way that they want to be there. Speaking on that, I want to say, don't be shy about being a little more pushy for people to serve. I know we got to serve Day coming up tomorrow. I'm filming this on November 22nd, so but I don't know how that's going to go. Maybe I need to shut up because you already got it handled, and it's a fine line. I know it is. You don't want to drive people away, but I'm of the mindset, if you ain't here to serve, why are you here? Because this is our church. You are part of our church. If you were part of my family, if we all lived in the same darn house, we'd help each other cook, clean, and do everything in the house together, take care of the house. And nobody gonna sit on the couch and play video games all day. We're all part of the family. We got to help each other with these kids. We got to help each other with this building. We got to help each other. We got to help our church. This is our church. Clearly, it's not the leadership's church. Clearly, it's not any of the ministers' church. They've come and gone. So I don't know. I just wish it was presented in that way. If you're not serving, this is your church, your family. Not everybody has the capacity to serve. Some people got 20 kids. Some people got disabilities. Some people, I don't know, whatever it is. I get it. But some of y'all can. Some of y'all don't even know how fun it is. I mean, there's positions that aren't fun. There's positions that are fun to me. And some of y'all don't even know what's available. You know, I got a friend that started serving in production recently and loves it. Never done that before. Never knew that was the thing that he might do someday. Loves it. But you know, don't again, this is my opinion that we need to be somewhat more lovingly pushy to get people to serve. Because it should be, requirement's a strong word, but I feel like it should be more of a burden. It should be. It should be. Everybody should be burdened to serve in some way. I mean, burden's a strong word too, but compelled. Maybe compelled's a better word. But that's most of it. I probably could go all night, but those are the big ones. I want to see people. I want to see the church care about the people and the people care about the church more. That's the overlying theme here. I want to see everyone in the church care more about the church. I want to see the church care more about the people that are there. I really, really do. There are so many ways that, you think about Hope Healthcare. You know, they never knew they were going to be this big, this helpful, back when they were Kingsway or anywhere along the way. Probably every year they grow in a way they don't even know it. But the need's there. It's met somehow. They don't know how, but it always gets met. And Kingsway could be the same. You know, we can meet the need. We could be the people. They don't know who all's going to volunteer, who all's going to jump in. But they do. People do. They put out the word. They get help. And, I mean, Kingsway's, it's not that we don't frequently ask people to serve, but we don't compel them to serve. You know, people need to frame that this is not Matt's church or the staff's church. It's yours. It's your church. Whoever you are sitting there listening to Matt, you are a member of this body. And this body doesn't need dead fingers, dead feet. It needs people serving, showing up when you're ready. We're not talking to the first time guests. We're not talking about people who've been there a month, but people who are here. You are Kingsway. You're 5 years in and you're not serving. Come on, man. Help us. Help us be everything we can be in this church. You know, the King. If you want to see Kingsway be 10 times what it is, it's waiting on you. It's waiting on you to help it. So I'd love to have more conversations with anybody that wants to talk. Man, I hope this is taken to heart. I really do. You know, when we talked in my house about do we stay at Kingsway or not, I don't know. Do I want to leave? No. I mean, no one likes starting over, but I don't want to stay because I'm lazy. I don't want to stay because I know people. If I don't feel like it's the family I need to be in, I need to go somewhere. I said, buddy, I pass 20 churches every day, every week on my way to church. I could go anywhere. Man, I do love Kingsway, though. I think we've got a lot of good people. I think we've got a good presence. Got a good preacher. We're doing the right things in some ways. But there's so much more we could be doing. And I can hope bring that to realization. So, love y'all.